Okay, everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to another monthly agent meeting. Thanks for being here. It's good to see all your faces. So we're going to start off today with the lovely Lance McElfresh. If you guys haven't got a chance to meet Lance, he's going to make you so happy every time you see him. So hopefully you get to meet him soon. Lance, could you start with kind of a brief introduction of who you are and how long you've been in real estate and Platte, and then jump into your neighborhood? And then can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up. Okay, cool. Lance, just let me know when you want me to skip to different pictures, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Rosie. I hope I can live up to all of that. Lance McElfresh, I've been in real estate 17 and a half years. I had a midlife crisis and left corporate world and went to work actually for Joe Everhart in my early 30s. And now I'm a lot older than that. I learned and did most of my business downtown, and I've seen so many changes. It's been incredible when you could used to be able to buy a lot for $5,000 and now you can't buy it for $85,000 or $200, depending on where you are. I have been with Platte since just this May, but I have had transactions with Mark in the past and was really impressed with him, and I have kind of kept an eye on Platte's growth for several years and made a change to a different real estate company about 5 years ago, and then that fizzled out and probably stayed too long. But I did, made the right change in May. So anyway, we have been in our home. We purchased this home. We lived in Fall Creek Place. I met my partner in 2003 when I sold him a home at 23rd and Talbot. It was one of the landmark homes, if anybody remembers all of that way back then. Through Joe Everhart, we listed all of the landmark homes. These were homes that hadn't been lived in or were going to be saved. And we did it all at no charge, which was obviously a great PR thing for us. But that left me being the person that got to go inside all of the homes in the middle of the winter when they ripped out all of Pennsylvania Street in the mud and all that sort of stuff, and take my screwdriver and let them in. And now those homes are selling for somewhere between $300,000 and $600,000. Got paid $55,000 for his. We sold it then later, a few years later, for about $265,000. But anyway, we decided to be outside of a homeowners association. So we moved over we found this house. I had literally knocked on the door a few years before. We knew the neighbors next door. Our neighborhood's kind of really quiet. Most people don't even know we exist, but I'm literally a half a block from College, right on Sutherland on the south side of the creek, on the east side of College, and Sutherland follows the west side as well. Our neighborhood is now called Monon Yards. We bought the house in 2006. It needed tons of work. There was an empty lot next door, and we had hoped that we could purchase that at some point. We're about 4,300 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths. The house was built in 1910. The neighborhood extends from 25th Street on the south to 30th Street on the north. It extends from College on the west to the Monon Trail on the east. So I started looking at this neighborhood a long time ago, thinking those are some natural boundaries that at some point, if anything really starts to happen, this neighborhood's going to be sitting very well. There were most of the homes, as in Fall Creek Place, had been destroyed, fire, torn down, whatever. One of the neighbors, actually just an interesting tidbit, has over the many years that he's lived here collected about 52 lots. That was my last count in just this little area, and is working with developers right now to either sell those as a package or, so there's going to be a lot of new development here. The neighborhood started out as a affluent neighborhood. It was originally part of the 1821 land grant. It was sold in 1839. It changed hands a couple of times, but a gentleman by the name of John Sutherland built the first family home here approximately in 1827, and it would have been right here on Sutherland, near where we are. And first I need to say that I need to attribute all of my information to a lovely lady who is no longer a neighbor, sold her house a few years ago, who had been here for many, many years. Her name is Dolores Wisdom, and in 2014, she finished a book called What a Grand View. This neighborhood is split into originally 5 different segments of Grandview and was giving different names that all ended in Grandview. But here's the book that she wrote, and I purchased it from Amazon a few years ago, and it is fantastic if you have any interest in that sort of thing. My house was built by a gentleman, a family, who was a textile merchant, again in 1910. The house right next to us is owned by neighbors who I knew before we purchased our house. That was part of the Allison family. He was a cousin to the Allison family member who established Allison Engine. And it's probably, if you've not been over here, it's probably 12,000 square feet, and it's on 4 lots. And it's incredible, and it's as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside. But anyhow, so again, originally it was an affluent neighborhood. Post-war, and Dolores coins this phrase a bit, but there was white exodus, and so it became predominantly a Black neighborhood. And I purchased another house in the neighborhood first before we bought this one on Carrollton, which is just 1 street behind us. And it was just a little family whose mom and dad had bought the house in the 50s, or probably, yeah, in the 50s, I remember. And they raised 12 children in it. It was 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, and it's 1,600 square feet. They raised 12 children there. And this was all the children that had sold the house to me when the mother and father had passed. So it's kind of amazing. There's some lovely people that live in this neighborhood. Again, it's very, very quiet. A lot of the homes have been torn down again over the years, so there's going to be a lot of development coming this way. The biggest piece that we have, and the one thing that the reason that the name is now Monon Yard, is as part of the Homeowners Association a few years ago, there was a commuter rail that came through here. And Rosie, if you want to show, some of you may have heard the story about the 1913 flood, and there's tons of that's actually stick on that picture. This is a picture on the south side of the creek. My house is so the big house is to the very far right. My house is the one Rosie is circling. The house was originally built, just another tidbit, as a stick frame wood sided house. When we bought it, it's completely bricked with a green tile roof. We think that happened maybe sometime in the 30s or 40s. We have no idea, but we had one section of the brick we had to take down, and all the original siding and trim is still under there, painted light yellow. It's kind of crazy. But anyway, this shows the flood of 1913. Sutherland runs right in front of the houses. The street runs right in front of the houses, and then there's a little bit of parkway to the creek. You can kind of see it there in the middle, the rail. The railway ran over to the Monon Trail and then up and down the Monon Trail. And there was what they call a roundhouse in a 14-acre section along the Monon Trail. If you ever come up this far or go down this far on the Monon Trail, you'll see there's all this land there. It's actually a brownfield that they've been working on cleaning up, but that was where the roundhouse was, where all of the trains from that brought commuters into the city would go there to turn around and then go back out. And this train track was washed down during the 1913 flood. Since then, or just immediately thereafter, the city organized building of, if you look across when you're going up Fall Creek Parkway, the city organized building literally a 20-foot wall that ran all the way up the creek, so we'll never be flooded again. But that's what's there now. We're hoping it's all wooded on this side of it, but it would be they left enough flat space that it would be a great, or just a commuter trail, like a biking, walking trail right along the creek at the top of this wall. So we kind of go down there and look at things every once in a while. But unfortunately, over the years, people have used it to dump stuff in. So there's some cleanup to do, which is very sad. We're the neighbors next door and I, and the couple of neighbors now to the east are really watch. If there's anybody actually poking around, we get after them pretty quickly and tell them to move on. So my house here in the middle, the house next door was torn down in the 70s. That's the vacant lot that we have since purchased and built our garage. Actually, that's part of our yard to the picture to the right. To the left, the house is gone, and we own that as well. So we own all that part in the middle, and then the house to the far left is still standing. It had a fire many years ago, and they took the roof down. So there's literally a staircase that goes to right into the roof on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor doesn't really exist anymore. There's another small house just to the other side of that one that's been built, and that was built in about the 40s. Again, very quiet. We have no houses across the street from us, but behind us, it's a lot smaller homes. And on smaller lots, the lots are standard 30 by about 120 right in behind us. And then throughout the neighborhood, they go back to a much larger size. We're just starting to see, as the neighborhood becomes more sought after, we're just starting to see prices go quite a bit higher. I was just looking at what the activity has been in the last year. There are 4 homes available, listed between the 270s and the pushing the 500s. What's sold over the last year is 10 houses listed between 44,000 and 260,000. So I don't mind telling you, we paid 200,000 for our house, and we have done very well with that. And we've done a lot of work to it, but we got a lot more to do. But we've done very well as far as an increase in value, because it rivals, and this is something that we've been told, it rivals, and so do the other houses here, the homes on Meridian Street. This is where the people that didn't want to live on busy Meridian Street built their homes in the country, so to speak. Again, the neighborhood started being developed more so in the very late 1890s and into the early 1900s. The flood came along and kind of caused it to be set back. And then again, it changed as after the first, actually the Second World War, folks started moving to the suburbs. So,
Lance, can you tell everyone why it's called Monon Yards now?
Monon Yards is because that's what that roundhouse was called. That was all called Monon Yards, that 14 acres, and it was just chaos over there all the time, apparently, with all the different trains coming from, and they named all the different states that the trains would be brought from, but that was really, that was kind of a train yard, literally.
Where the trains would come and like turn around and stuff, right?
Turn around, yeah. There, if you ever, I had a couple of pictures of the roundhouse, but I didn't get those over to Rosie, so I apologize. But they would come and turn around there, and then head back out. But we just changed that a few years ago. It was friends and neighbors. Didn't make much sense, and we wanted something that really spoke to what the neighborhood actually had been. So that was what we had decided on. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So if there are any questions I can answer, I'm happy to. I can tell you it's been a neighborhood that I've pushed, even south, as far south as 16th Street, that I've pushed for many, many years for people to invest in, because I just saw that at some point great things were going to happen here, and we're starting to see it. So yeah.
That's so good, Lance. Thank you so much. That was also like a really sweet little history lesson. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me talk about it, because again, people know very little about it, and there's tons more great history. A lot of the city leaders, a lot of the national leaders actually had some part in this neighborhood at some point, again, because of the huge commuter rail system. So it's been, at one time, it was quite prolific in national politics as well. So
yeah, I feel like, when I came over to drop off, I was dropping off something at your house, and I was just like, what is this little oasis over here? It's so nice and quiet.
When we first moved in, our friends were like, is it safe to leave my car here? And I was like, well, if you're worried about your car, you don't have to come visit. We've never had any problems. It was very rough, not as rough as it had been, but it was very rough when we moved in. Lots of in the street drug deals and prostitution and the whole thing.
Sure.
But that's slowly gone away, and we're, especially with the walking trail across Fall Creek, people now kind of cut through to get to the Monon on this side. So it's really cool to see people walking their dogs and kids in the neighborhood now, and so yeah, it's been fun.
It's so good. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all, we're gonna turn it over to Blake Johnson. Blake is president of IndyHub. Blake, before you kind of launch in, would you mind kind of sharing a little bit about how you got where you are and a little bit about your connection with Platt as well?
Sure. So thanks for having me. Really, really great to see everyone sort of and to chat with you. Yeah, so I've been at IndyHub now for coming up on 2 years. And I'd come over from a national nonprofit called Complete College America, where our focus was on college completion rates. Most people don't realize that in higher education, the freshman class looks a lot more like America than ever before. A lot more people are going to college, but the graduating class still is pretty white and pretty affluent. So we spent a lot of time trying to close that gap and build pipelines for talent. And then I was also in charge of metro strategies there. So I would work and consult with different cities on how to increase their college completion rates. I've worked on Capitol Hill for Congressman Andre Carson here locally, and then also as a public school teacher. In 2016, I was elected in 2015 to the Indianapolis City Council. So I served there for a full term. And then after a resignation in the State House of Representatives in June, I took over there and I'm on the ballot to continue in that seat here in November. And then the most important thing about me is that I'm married to Natalie Clayton, which gives me at least a little bit of credibility maybe to talk to you guys today. So happy to be here and to share a little bit about what IndyHub's up to and how we think it can be useful for you all in what you do every day. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, Rosie. We'll see if this works. Okay, everybody see that? Beautiful People Make the City logo. Cool. Okay, so for those of you who don't know anything about IndyHub, we are a 15-year-old organization. And when we were founded, the main goal was around trying to highlight that Indianapolis could be an attractive place for young people to move to and live in. 15 years ago, Indianapolis obviously has gone through a lot of transformations, even just in that period of time. And when we were founded, the corporate community was really, really worried because they were having a hard time attracting talent to the community. And then if they got talent here, they were having a hard time keeping them. And so IndyHub was created to be a hub of 20 and 30 somethings to make this the kind of place that folks would want to plant roots in long term. Now, over 15 years, a lot has changed. Indianapolis is a much more thriving community, especially for a younger population, which is really, really good for a lot of reasons. Tax base, long-term income growth, all of that. But we still have a lot of work to do. And so IndyHub continues to try to be at the forefront of what we're doing to attract, retain, and develop talent so that Indianapolis is their home long-term. So a couple quick things here. Oops, this isn't exactly what I wanted it to do. Let me try one more thing here. You'd think after 5 months I'd have this figured out, but I do not. Share screen.
It's always going to be hard, Blake. Technology, man.
Yeah, okay, I think this will do it. Okay. Okay, so as I said, our mission is really about 20 and 30 somethings, but we don't like cart at the door. So we have people of every generation that hang out and do stuff with us. But our goal is to grow, engage, and empower a community of 20 and 30 somethings who are meaningfully connected to the city and invested in its future. Grow meaning obviously grow the population, engage meaning make the engagement deeper, more intentional, and then empower is really around leadership development. So I'll kind of walk through all of that somewhat quickly here. Now, part of our goal is to understand millennials because as of right now, 20 and 30 somethings and millennials are the same thing as of right now for one more year. And so when you do any kind of like regular search about information about millennials, you often find stuff like this, right? It's a very, very negative connotation. Stop buying avocado toast if you want to buy a home. Millennials have officially ruined brunch. We've also ruined grocery stores, the McDonald's McWrap. We've ruined religion and churches, which is a pretty big undertaking to do that all at once. We're not eating cereal because it's too much work. Millennials want money, but not hard work. I mean, this is kind of the general kind of thing you'll see in terms of millennial coverage by popular media outlets. And then this one was really funny. The hot new millennial trend is hating millennials. So the fact, though, is all the research that actually dives into things beyond superficial about millennials are that they're a generation that really cares a lot about making a difference, that they see small acts and big acts alike as ways to leave an imprint on the world. They are more generous. I mean, there's a lot more great data, and I'm not going to go into all of that, but I do want to kind of provide a little bit of extra context as you think about millennials, both in terms of home buying and why they move and why they choose the cities they're in, but also how we engage them and ensure that they feel like they're intentionally connected. So here's the basics on millennials based on Pew. So there's some kind of competing arguments about what the years are, but Pew Research looks at 1980 to 2000. Right now, millennials represent 1/3 of the US population and 1/3 of the US workforce. They are the most diverse generation in history. By 2025, they'll represent 75% of the global workforce, $170 billion in spending power. And on the negative side of this, $1 trillion in student loan debt just amongst millennials alone. 66% have nothing saved for retirement. 53% have children. And this generation is the first in a very, very, very long time that's making less than their parents did at the same age. So 20% less, which makes sense when you think about all the moments that have happened to this generation. So Pew did a survey asking millennials and every other generation, every other living generation, what moments have happened in their lifetimes that have had the greatest impact on them. And this is the top 12 for millennials. Some of this won't surprise you. 9/11 is number one for every living generation. The election of Barack Obama, things like the technological revolution. You can see this kind of list. I don't need to go through them. But as we think about why millennials act the way they do, and I say they, but I mean we, I'm part of this generation, as several of you on the call are as well. But we also know that these moments have influenced it. The Great Recession, while low on the list, obviously impacts everything that has to do with how millennials spend money and think about money. Okay, so when it comes to our work, there are 3 data points that really stand out and are incredibly important to us and influence everything we do. The first is the idea of 90 days. We've got quite a bit of research that shows if someone moves to a new community, whether it's for a job, to come home to take care of family, whatever the motivation, you have about 90 days to help them build more intentional and meaningful connections before they already start thinking that they made a mistake or that they should go to a different community. Now, there are all kinds of factors that play into this. If you come with a family, it's not as pronounced. If you come by yourself and you're not meaningfully connected, we're very likely to lose you within 18 to 24 months. So we think a lot about what can we do in these first 90 days to make sure people feel like they belong. The second piece is 1 million. Amongst 20 and 30 somethings, 1 million millennials move every single year, okay? And so as a city, if we're on the receiving end of that, we're doing okay. But if we are on the net exporting of that talent and those individuals, we're struggling. So this is just movement between 2012 and 2017, the most recent data that was aggregated by Brookings Metro, showing where these population net changes are happening. So this focuses on 25 to 34-year-olds, but you can see Indianapolis and the metro area, so this is MSAs, which includes Carmel and some of the suburbs, are still net importers of talent, where young adults are moving. And you guys have probably seen this in the industry, that a lot more young movers, people coming in and giving Indianapolis a shot. Meanwhile, major metros, so like tier 1 metros like New York City, Miami, Chicago, are starting to bleed population for a lot of the reasons that Indianapolis is doing really well. Affordability, making a greater investment in transit, all of that. So you can kind of see how these numbers break out across major metro areas. Now, what's really fascinating is if you think about why millennials in particular are choosing to move to certain places, there's some really great research out there. And the American Institute for Economic Research spent several years really exploring why these decisions are being made in terms of migration trends. And so the number one thing that people in our generation of millennials cared about was that there were already young and well-educated people in the community they're moving to. And you can imagine this is a perception thing. So it's not like these folks are looking at the census data and saying there are more bachelor's degree holding, young people in this community, so I'm going to pick that one. But when they get when they start to experience a city or start to research it, do they get that vibe from it? The second is strong economic climate. And what's really fascinating is when you zoom out on this data, 70% of the decision-making points that a millennial is making about a city is based on quality of life, not economics. So the old model, I think when you think about boomers and even Gen X, they were often making the decision of what city to go to based on what job was going to be available for them. And millennials have flipped that, and they'll pick a city that they think is going to provide them great mass transit, great connection, and are going to then find the job that makes sense for them, as long as they've been communicated that there are opportunities available in that community. And then the third thing is racial and ethnic diversity. This is consistently top 3 on any survey you do with millennials, but when you look at the aggregate data, a not diverse community is not going to win as it relates to talent attraction. And so you can see this is actually, not just to be completely honest with you, in the work I do, I deal with companies all the time. Companies are very much struggling to attract and retain talent of color because they show up from other communities that are much more diverse, and they go, hey, this feels like a kind of monolithic city. This isn't working for me, and we lose that talent all of the time. So just some interesting stuff, and you can always look more of this up at the American Institute for Economic Research. They have a lot of really great data. And then this I pulled from Realtor.com, just as we kind of think about some of the research that we do around millennials. And this graphic was really instructive for me based on their most recent economic forecast. Now, granted, this came out prior to the pandemic, so I think a lot of things have shifted. But this kind of gives you millennial preferences on, they're looking for around 1,800 square feet, single family homes, and the suburbs are becoming just as attractive as major metro areas are. And so we see this anecdotally in the people we serve, where a lot more people are logging onto our stuff or coming to an event from Carmel and Brownsburg and Whitestown, and they're actually making that choice. And part of that, and you guys have probably seen this, is because the suburbs are developing really interesting downtown core areas that mimic major metro areas. And so you're seeing a lot more people choose that. Down payments are larger than ever, even though they're not saving anything, right? So what we're finding amongst millennials that's even more fascinating is the distribution of wealth is really unequal, which is true at the economic level across the board of all generations. But in millennials, you have some really, really, really rich millennials who are doing really, really great in tech and other industries. And then you have millennials that are really, really struggling and don't have any money. And it's been absolutely silent out here since 9 o'clock this morning. And now my neighbor's going to mow. So I may move locations here in a second, if that holds up. Okay, and the last data point, holy moly, I think she's mowing my yard. The last data point is this idea of 50%. Sorry about this. Natalie's shaking her head in the living room, I'm sure. The last data point is around 50%. Cigna did some data research on essentially the mental health of 20 and 30 somethings. And other generations as well. And they found that half of Americans report feeling lonely some or all of the time. And as you look at different generations, so if you look at millennials and then Gen Z, those numbers are even worse. So these are numbers that were before the pandemic. So if you imagine right now, the idea of a social recession is probably hitting harder than any of us could have imagined. People are lonely, they are depressed. Work productivity is higher than ever before, but that's at the cost of work-life balance. And what Cigna actually found was that the effect of chronic loneliness is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so there are really serious implications for folks feeling disconnected from their community, and as a result, other people in it. So the way IndyHub thinks about this is, what can we do programmatically to address those needs? How can we ensure that people in their first 90 days feel really connected to the community, and thus they establish this as a place that they could live long-term? What can we do to take that engagement from social and kind of epidermal to something a little more meaningful in terms of involvement in volunteerism or finding a cause they care about? And last, what can we do to transition that engagement to taking on roles of leadership in the city, which as soon as we've got you at that point, the likelihood of you leaving is minimal. Okay, so just a couple other quick things, like macro level. When we think about our audience, this is kind of how we look at it. New arrivals, which I think is really critical for the work you all do and how we can work together, is thinking about when someone moves to Indianapolis from another city, what can we do to get them plugged in? And then these other groups, we spend a lot of time with our corporate partners. We work with new hires. We're always thinking about young people generally and how we can get them more engaged. So the work happens in 3 buckets: getting connected, getting involved, shaping our city. On the get connected side, this is that kind of social, fun, experience the city, get to see it as a place with a lot of assets and amenities. So we host exclusive events throughout the year that are really like, it might be a Sunday at Lucas Oil for a discounted price and then field access. Or it might be a night at the ballet with a little reception beforehand, or a night at an art gallery, or it could be a concert, or it could be a cooking class or a cocktail class. Something that's low barrier, usually really, really cheap to do, and provides just an immediate glimpse of how cool the city is. We host 5 to 7s, which are happy hours. As long as we've been around, IndyHub's done happy hours with the goal of just bringing people together. We now do, we call them happy hours with a purpose. So we always partner with a nonprofit. And so while you're mingling and whatnot, you also have a chance to learn about a nonprofit that's doing some good in the city. And then new in 2021, the goal was to do this second half of 2020, but as you can imagine, a lot of things have shifted around in-person gatherings. But in 2021, we're going to launch the Indy Welcome Party, which will be twice a year, where we essentially do outreach to all of our partner companies. I think our plan with you all would be, we'd even have maybe a postcard that comes from both of us to any new clients that moved into the city. And we'd say, hey, come hang out with us. We're going to introduce you to some people from around the community and also provide you a space to meet other new people in a really cool venue, probably with some live music or something like that. And we kind of flip on the head the idea that we all throw going away parties for people, and we like celebrate them and send them off. And we're kind of like, let's not do that as much and welcome people here so that they feel like this is their community and they were welcome with open arms. And then the other piece of this that we kind of think a lot about is really being intentional about it. So it's one thing to top a funnel with talent, get them to be welcomed into the city and feel connected. But it's another thing to really take an individual and say, what can we do, like almost concierge level, to make you love this city and want to make it your home long-term. And so also that your client is buying 3 or 4 houses across their lifetime in Indianapolis rather than choosing to go buy it in Chattanooga, Tennessee or someplace else. So that's where our core connections work comes in. So you might say to us, hey, I had this person move into a house in Community Heights. They are awesome, and they would be really, really great to be more plugged into the community. You'd send their name to us, and we'd reach out and say, hey, welcome to Indy. We want to help you get plugged in. And so we have them take a little survey that kind of says, here are the things they care about. What are the things they're looking to do to get more involved in? We then set them up in a one-on-one meeting with a city ambassador who would be somebody that is perfect for them to meet. So based on their interests, where they came from, all of that data, we connect in with one of 20 individuals we've got that meets for a cup of coffee or a beer or a virtual drink these days, just to get to know them and welcome them really intentionally. And then we actually start to curate connection points based on the data we get from that meeting and from the survey. So if you're someone who really loves animals, you'd get an invitation to volunteer with us at the Humane Society, and then we'd invite you to a 5 to 7 so you can meet some other people. And then the coolest part of the whole thing is we then start to make introductions to other individuals. So the goal is that we would introduce you to 3 other people based on what we've gotten to know about you that you just need to know in this city to make you feel welcome. And throughout the whole process, we're continually staying in touch to make those connections more real. What's fascinating is the number of people over 15 years who've gone through this process, and it was like the spark for them to get really, really involved. And then we have great ambassadors. Rosie is an ambassador, so she meets with folks, which of course, Rosie would be great for this, right? To sit down and make you feel welcome and make you feel like you made a good choice about choosing the city. And then the last kind of data point on this, and I apologize for being a little bit wonky, but when we think about building those connections, we think about these 6 indicators. And so texture being the fun stuff, the restaurant scene, nightlife, all of that. People being the community of individuals that you feel like you can rely on in a city. Growth being personal and professional development. Civic opportunities being volunteerism, making a difference. And then neighborhood. We recognize that if you feel connected to your neighborhood at the micro level of an apartment building to the macro level of a place like Irvington, you're going to be much more interested in sticking around a long time. And the job piece we don't do as much with, but what we care about is that people feel that there are opportunities for them in the city, whether they're at Salesforce or Lilly, that if that didn't work out, they'd still have a place they could land. Just a couple of resources that would be useful. We maintain an event calendar that is updated every single day with what's going on around the city. We also maintain a young professionals group board where you can pick by categories and find an affinity group that would match your interests. And those are available just on our website for free. The second kind of tier of the work is around that deeper involvement and engagement. And so this is everything from educational experiences to finding ways to get you plugged in with groups that are doing actual work in the city. And so the kind of signature event we do is called IndyVolved. And if you've not ever attended IndyVolved, I would definitely encourage you to do so. IndyVolved usually, I feel like I'm saying that a lot, usually would be at Central Library. It takes up all 6 floors, over 100 nonprofits that are all looking for volunteers, board members, committee members, champions to join their work. Are met with 2,000 attendees that come through that library throughout the evening. We have food and drink, live music. At the end of the day, it really is a summit for people who give a damn about the city. And so everyone gets together and it's just a really, really cool event. We end up adding on average 60 to 100 volunteers per organization by the night's end. This year, IndyVolved is going to take place throughout the entire month of September. We're going to be highlighting through our digital channels a number of different organizations, still over 100, what they're doing in the community. Plaid is actually a sponsor of our Uncover the Good series, which is a series of conversations with nonprofit leaders about the challenges we face as a community and how people can get involved with them. And then we'll even be doing a workshop that's all about planning your impact. We've partnered with the Lilly School of Philanthropy to provide information on how, whether you're thinking about your money, your time, or your network, how you can plan that out for a year and make the largest impact possible. Raise Your IQ is just educational programming. We hold interesting conversations with experts to raise awareness around things that are happening in the city. We just did one of these on the facts about COVID-19 with Dr. Gabe Boslett from the IU School of Medicine, and just kind of shared, there's a lot of information out there. Some of it's really crazy and some of it's really good. And so we wanted to provide a forum for our folks to hear more, especially because millennials represent the highest number of positive cases of any generation. Book clubs, self-explanatory. We've been hosting those virtually. And then in 2021 also, we're going to launch a morning networking series called the Coffee Club that is all about interviewing an interesting person from the community while also providing a space for people to network with one another. We maintain a volunteer board on the website as well, consistently updated with ways to make a difference. And then you can kind of just see some of the partnerships that we are working with all of the time to increase that deeper level of engagement. We work really closely with the city and the chamber in particular to make things happen. And then the last piece of the programming is around the idea of shaping our city. And so we host the leadership development program. We constantly bring together groups that are engaging with young people to try to help them innovate and be more intentional with the way they engage this demographic. We have a partnership amongst all the major employers to think about how we attract, retain, and develop global talent. And then starting last year, well, I guess the beginning of this year in January, we hosted our first Shape Our City Summit, which is literally a local conference for young people to get together to talk about the things that they're worried about and how we can play a role in fixing them. And so you can kind of see we have a year-long plan, right? For any type of person, for whatever reason they're coming to the city, to make sure that their engagement is real, intentional, and meaningful. And so this is just an example of what that could look like for a new arrival. And I think I'll just focus on a new arrival because I think that's where you all might see people more often, where we would start with a welcome party, invite them to some things that are kind of fun, like a neighborhood tour or one of our happy hours. We do that one-on-one meeting with them. Maybe they'd join a book club, and then kind of move them through a sequence of other events until at the end of the year, they feel connected enough, they want to come be a part of that conference. And so overall, and I know I talked really fast, so I apologize for that, but at the end of the day, we recognize that community connection perhaps is more important than how happy someone is with their job. It's often more important than any other connection point they might have to a sense of place. If they feel like they belong, if they feel like they have people and places that make the community meaningful to them, they're far less likely to leave. So every day, that's how we're thinking about it. We're going into every morning saying, what can we do today so that that person who's on the fence about whether or not this city is for them has a place to land, so that that individual who just moved here in the middle of a pandemic to start a new job and hasn't been able to meet anyone in person has an option to build those connections in a meaningful way. And at the end of the day, what are we doing to build a new generation of leaders who are taking on roles in neighborhoods, in the city, at nonprofits to make this as great a city as we know it can be. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do want to say that we want to be a resource for you all. And so when you have that client that's moving to the community by themselves because they're coming home to take care of someone or they're coming for a new job, utilize us, connect us with those individuals. We're even, interested in helping with, closing gifts that have some of these resources in there so folks can get connected. And ultimately we'll be sharing with Rosie and the team and Emily always what we've got going on so you can share that out with your clients too. So with that, I talked a lot. I apologize, but Rosie, I'm happy to answer any questions or field any comments, curse words, or concerns, anything like that.
Oh, Blake, that was so lovely and made me want to come to an in-person IndyHub event so bad.
Soon, I hope. Someday.
Yeah. Blake, you didn't mention one of my favorite programs. I'm not sure if you still do it. Your Hello Neighbor programs. Are those still going on in normal world?
So in normal world, they probably would have been, and just because we don't know where things are headed, we're thinking a lot about what 2021 is going to look like. Sure. And so right now, I think, the exclusives are where we'll probably try to do some neighborhood tour stuff in 2021. And one thing I didn't mention also that we did this year, I mean, I think every nonprofit right now is like trying to pivot in a way that like makes our mission still work. So the month of July, we hosted Camp IndyHub, which is a lot like Hello Neighbor, was all about exploring the city, getting back into some of these restaurants and cocktail bars. It was about hearing stories about the history of neighborhoods. And we did all of that in kind of a single package for the month of July. And to kind of just provide you like how hungry people are for any kind of connection right now. In 2019, across all of our in-person events and any digital event we did, we probably had around 7,500 people we connected with. As of right now, if you look at all of our digital experiences, we've connected with 20,000 attendees this year alone. And that was before July, 50,000 people. We're going into September for IndyVolved, which will likely increase that by another 40% or so. So people right now, this kind of idea of the social recession is very real. It's actually very haunting. I mean, I think people are really struggling through this moment now, 5 months in, of still being almost entirely virtual for a lot of their engagement. And so I think if you've got clients now that have moved here and are trying to get connected to this city in a time like this, we're going to continue to offer stuff throughout the rest of the year to try to fill that gap. And I will just one plug, the book club is totally rad. And like everyone's been really, really getting engaged with that. We've sold out every single one we've hosted. And I think that's a really, really great way to meet people too.
That's so great. Like, yeah, Silva is one of our agents and she's just commenting, she's really involved in the medical community in Indy, and she's saying that a lot of new doctors who have moved to town recently have expressed those same sentiments of like, did I make the right choice moving here? It's like so hard to get connected to people right now. I'm curious kind of off that, like what you said, like practically, how do we connect people to you? Is it just an email to you, or is there a form that people should be filling out? What does that look like?
So the easiest way is to send an email of introduction to someone to hello@indyhub.org. And that's the easiest way we'd start to connect. Now we've started developing some postcard things because we're already partners with Platt. We also have a bunch of our No Mean City books that we can just give to you all that you could include with a little card about how to connect with us. And the thing is, we're nimble, right? We're a team of 4 people. We're here locally. And so if you've got an idea of how you want to engage with us with clients, we're also happy to do that. But at the end of the day, it's as easy as an email to hello@indyhub.org, introducing us to someone, and then our team, which are all just incredibly wonderful, nice people, take it from there and try to make some of those connections. And the other piece is, I think we're going to do a better job, I think, too, of providing marketing materials to all of you, so that if there's an event coming up, particularly the welcome party, I think the welcome party is going to be just a hugely important thing for us to do. We'll make sure you have the materials to share that and distribute it amongst your folks as well.
Yeah, that's so good. Guys, anyone else want to pop on here and ask a question or drop anything in the chat?
Hey, I have a question. I saw on one of your, on your screen before, something called Camp IndyHub. I would love to hear more what that's about.
So we are probably going to do Camp IndyHub again in 2021. And so I think, as I'm talking, I see I may be able to pull something up that kind of showcases everything that was in that. We recognize we were doing a lot of heavy stuff, right? So we were talking about systemic racism and social justice. We were talking in book clubs about all kinds of really heavy issues. We were talking about the pandemic and what companies were doing to try to respond. And so the month of July, we decided we would still continue those meaningful conversations, but we really wanted to do something that was just fun. And so there was a night where Neil Brown taught everyone how to make pasta carbonara, right? And
how did I miss that? I love him.
We did a night with a couple different mixologists to show how to make certain kinds of cocktails, and babies showed us how to make one of your famous burgers, right? So we did nights like that. We had a night with Historical Society where they told us some ghost stories, like around the campfire stuff. We interviewed interesting people about the work they're doing. So we talked with, Tom Hanley at 913 Sports and Michael Huber about mentorship and how their relationship has grown over the years. So some meaningful stuff, but also just some fun stuff. The Colts worked with us to do like how to get moving in the morning. And so, and we even had like a TikTok 101 lesson with Blue. So we had all kinds of fun stuff. And I think our goal for 2021 is to take what was entirely virtual this year and hopefully by the grace of God, be able to do some stuff that is in person next year that matches the same idea. So taking some of the best things about Hello Neighbor and providing that exploration with a kind of camp, laid back feel that's a little bit more fun. And I'll send over to Rosie. We have a screen shot of just all the different stuff that happened. There was even a morning mood booster. We partnered with Community Health to provide some mental health tips, recognizing how challenging these times can be. So really at the end of the day, everything we do, it tries to hit as many of these things as possible, right? About feeling like you're growing, feeling like you're getting more connected to people and places, and building a deeper sense of possibility for the imprint you can leave on the community as a whole.
That's so good, Blake.
If I can get out of this without a tough question from Natalie Clayton, then we'll have done just fine. So
I know, I'm actually pretty surprised. Oh, it's so good. Okay. Well, if no one else has any questions, we'll wrap up. Blake, thank you a ton. I love hearing Natalie multitasking. Yeah, love hearing your thoughts, and obviously I'm a huge fan of IndyHub, so thank you so much for coming and sharing.
My pleasure.
Bye everyone, have a good day.